All right, let's jump right in. Today we're looking at what should be good news, right? A US-backed peace plan for Ukraine. But instead of sighs of relief, what we're actually seeing is a ton of frustration, and it's coming from the very top. So, what's going on here? Let's unpack this puzzle. I mean, a peace plan, that sounds great. It's supposed to be a way out of this awful conflict. So that's the big question, the one we're really digging into. If a deal is supposedly this close, why is the White House, of all places, so openly frustrated? And bam, here it is. This is what makes it all so fascinating. This isn't just some rumor from an unnamed source. Nope. President Trump himself came out and said this. He put the tension right out there for everyone to see. Talk about a clear signal that the pressure is on. Okay, so to really get what's happening, we've got to look at this from all sides. Let's start with Washington, because their position, well, it's a lot more complicated than you might think. So the president's comment didn't just pop up out of the blue. You have to picture this. US and Ukrainian officials were locked in this intense 3-day diplomatic marathon down in Florida. And what came out of it? Nothing. No breakthrough. So that lack of progress seems to be the exact trigger for turning up the heat publicly. But here's where it gets kind of confusing. On one hand, you've got all this frustration. But on the other, you have the U.S. Special Envoy, Keith Kellogg, saying things like this. He's basically saying, hey, we're so close. We're in the last 10 meters of this race. And when you hear that optimism, it makes the president's frustration seem, well, even more intense, doesn't it? Yeah, but that hopeful, we're almost there vibe, that is definitely not the whole story. Because if you listen to other voices, really influential ones in the president's orbit, you hear something completely different. It's almost like the U.S. approach has a split personality. And here is a perfect example of that split. You've got one official saying a deal is within reach, and then you have Donald Trump Jr. dropping this bombshell. He's not just questioning the deal, he's questioning the entire U.S. support for Ukraine, calling President Zelensky a great marketer. I mean, you can't get a clearer picture of the deep, deep division right there. Okay, so that's the messy situation from Washington's side. Now let's switch gears. How does all of this look and feel from Kyiv? Because, as you're about to see, their reality is a world away from a negotiation room in Florida.
Listen to President Zelensky's choice of words here. It's classic diplomacy. Constructive, although not easy. What's he really saying? He's saying, yeah, we're talking, but he's also screaming, this is hard and we're not there yet. It's a world of difference from that last 10 meters talk we heard earlier.
And if you want to know why Kyiv is so cautious, you just have to look at what's happening on the ground while these talks are going on. We're talking about constant barrages of Russian drones and missiles, their power plants, their rail lines, all getting hit. People are left without heat, without water. So for Ukraine, this isn't some abstract diplomatic exercise. This is about survival day in and day out. And it's not like the US is the only country they're talking to. That's a super important piece of this. President Zelensky is also in constant conversation with European leaders. Think the UK, Germany, France. He's trying to make sure everyone is on the same page to build a united front for any peace plan. All right, we've seen Washington's frustration and Kyiv's caution. Now for the third corner of this triangle, the Kremlin. And their messaging? Well, it's been all over the place, confusing and, honestly, flat-out contradictory. Just look at this. It lays out the confusion perfectly. On one side, you have President Trump saying, oh, Russia's fine with it. You have the Kremlin sort of welcoming a U.S. strategy. But then, look at the other side. President Putin himself says parts of it are unworkable. U.S. diplomats go to Moscow and come back saying there's been no visible shift. So, what is it? Is Russia on board or not? It seems like they want it to be deliberately unclear. So, with all this back and forth, all these mixed messages and pressures, what's the actual holdup? Let's get right down to the core issues that are stopping this deal from happening. Okay, it really comes down to two massive fundamental things. First, territory. What land, if any, is Ukraine expected to give up? That's huge. And second, security guarantees. What promises will Kyiv get that this won't happen again? We're talking real, ironclad promises of military help. These 2 points are the absolute heart of the disagreement. Now, the U.S. envoy claims they've narrowed the huge argument over land down to just 2 key regions, or oblasts. But let's be real. Even if it's just 2, we're still talking about massive, heavily contested territories. This is no small thing. And you know, it's not even just about the land itself. There's this other uniquely terrifying issue on the table. The Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. This is the largest one in all of Europe. Who controls it is a massive deal because the risk of a nuclear catastrophe is always there. And right now, that critical issue is totally unresolved. So let's recap where we are. You've got these deep divisions, a ton of mixed signals, and literally life or death issues on the negotiating table. It's no wonder the path forward looks, well, completely unpredictable. And because things are stalled, the White House isn't just sitting back and waiting. They're actively trying to break the logjam. They're cranking up the economic pressure, hitting Russian oil firms with sanctions. The thinking is pretty clear. Squeeze Moscow to gain more leverage and hopefully force them back to the table in a serious way. So in the end, it really is a three-way standoff, isn't it? You have the White House pushing hard, getting frustrated. You have Kyiv being extremely careful because, they're fighting for their very existence. And then you have the Kremlin playing its cards close to the chest, sending mixed signals and pushing back on the big stuff. And as the war just keeps grinding on with everyone seemingly stuck in their positions, you have to wonder, what's it going to take? What, or maybe who, can actually break this deadlock and find a way forward?